through fields of green, glowing ice that burned her eyes, above wild infernos raging in the deep where the sea was scabbed with ash and pockmarked with geysers of gushing black fire. She'd seen no other living soul upon the water. She hoped it would stay that way. Today on the Comic Book Report, Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, Book 1, Love in the Wasteland. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're taking a look at a trade paperback coming from Boom Studios. This is Volume 1 of Jason Aaron's Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. This is a very fun dystopian love story series. It's honestly a fantastic melding of genres and tones, and honestly, I'm here for it. I personally knew very little about this series before diving in, and now I can't wait to talk about it. Before we start the review, however, I just want to say a special thank you to all of those at Boom Studios for providing a review copy. Thanks again, everyone. Now let's get started. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Jason Aaron and penciled by Alexander Tefenkgi. The comics in this volume were published by Boom Studios beginning in 2022. The volume itself collects Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issues 1 through 5. And finally, this standard-sized trade paperback collection has nice glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 176 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. I would also like to note that this comic book series does present some male nudity, and while it's not used in a sexual context, I thought it was still worth noting. I will not be presenting those panels in this video, but still, you've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at today's trade paperback from Boom Studios. This is a beautiful standard size edition, and it's worth noting that the cover is the cover for the first issue of the comic series. This is important because it's not included in the cover art gallery at the back of the collection. I believe it's because it's presented here. So feast your eyes. I think it's definitely a beautiful cover, and I am happy we have it collected here on the front of the book. On the spine, we have a pretty straightforward design. We have a lot of the orangey colors that we have on the cover. We have the Boom Studio logo, the title of the series, some of the creators, and the little volume 1 at the bottom there. Nothing too fancy, but I think everything is really readable, and it does look good on the bookcase. A pretty just straightforward trade paperback spine. On the back of the book, we have a lot of the great design work and colors retained. We have some descriptions about the book, some reviews, pricing, and things like that. All pretty standard stuff here. Overall, I think the design work for the exteriors of this paperback are all really sharp. I love the look of this paperback, and some of the design choices you'll see in a minute on the interiors as well. I just think it all looks really great. And for all you prospective collectors out there, I did want to go ahead and showcase the binding for this paperback. It is just your straightforward glued binding. This is really common for what I expect from a lot of trade paperbacks. Nothing too different or dissimilar here. It lays down pretty well, maybe minimal gutter loss. I personally don't have any complaints, but I just wanted to be sure to showcase the binding as well. Okay, now that we've finished up looking at the binding, we can go ahead and transition to the book proper, and we can go ahead and dive in. After some really beautiful pages here, again, some more kind of reviews, things like that, we have a full 2-page kind of title page, creator breakdowns, things like that. We have a publication information page, and then interesting enough, for a trade paperback, we have a full numbered table of contents. I absolutely love seeing this. I rarely ever see this in a paperback. We have kind of each issue broken down into chapters, and we have the chapter name listed. Very cool stuff. After that, we do have the chapter 1 page break, which again I think is just gorgeously designed, and then we jumped right into the contents of issue 1. Now, for me, I love seeing the issue covers present at the front of each issue, but short of that, I actually really do love these chapter breaks. I think this is all really well made, and I am happy to say we have most of the covers for the issues at the back of the book in the extras, with the exception of issue 1, which again I believe is just the cover for the paperback itself. Okay, so what is this series? What is Once Upon a Time at the End of the World? Well, I'm so happy you asked. I knew next to nothing about it other than the evocative cover here, and I just loved the title. I was drawn in immediately, and I wanted to check out what it was about. Then I found out it was written by Jason Aaron, who I've really loved, like, his Star Wars series. I love what I've read of his Thor run, and so many other comics he's written over the years, and I was curious to see him tied to what looked kind of like a lovey-dovey series mixed with some kind of gruesome dystopia. I thought the melding of genres and kind of tones sounded interesting, and I was not disappointed. This is honestly a really fascinating book, and in these first 5 issues, we cover a lot of ground. We start introduced to this just totally destroyed version of the world where there's basically just pollution overload. Everything is just a wasteland. We have like oceans of trash. Everything is out to kind of kill you or destroy you. There's radiation. There's weird creatures. People are mutated. Just everything. It's a horrible, horrible place to be. And we have this woman basically kind of rowing her boat through this ocean of trash in this totally dilapidated, broken down cityscape. She basically jumps on in front of this kind of skyscraper-like building, which is sort of the home base of this central character named Maceo or Mace. He lived in this tower with his parents before they both died. They're actually still locked away in their bedroom in each other's arms, kind of skeletalized. And he's sort of this man-child who lives off of candy. He's a just wild inventor. He's quirky, and he's largely been spared some of the horrors of the outside world. He's converted this skyscraper into his personal kind of laboratory and just sanctuary. You have this feeling that he's maybe kind of starved for social interaction, but he, again, has never really been out in the wasteland. And in comes this young woman around his same age on this boat, and she is a total wastelander. She's part of this interesting troupe of sort of survivalists who have kind of found their way across the wasteland. They're searching for this hidden oasis that they believe is going to solve all their problems, and they live by this really, really rigid code for survival. And we basically instantly pair these two together. He allows her in, she gets resources, food, and she's kind of thrown off by Mace, not having seen anything like him before, and really just believing he's a liability. She takes all the supplies she needs and basically is on her way, and Mace essentially says, after giving her the tour and all the resources she needs, like, hey, I can go with you or you can stay. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it, but we find Mace ultimately making the choice to go out into the wasteland by her side with his gigantic backpack on his back, filled with all of his inventions, this and that, and we just have this kind of odd couple pairing right away. There's not really romantic chemistry right from the jump, but it's a fun meet cute, and we just have such divergent personality types here, and we basically just have them traversing the wasteland for these first couple issues. With this as well, we have these flash forwards to a dilapidated old man who's revealed to be Mace, and it's basically a much more gruesome looking, like even further future. And in these scenes, we have him being tortured for essentially a machine he worked on of some kind. He doesn't seem to be with this young woman anymore, whose character's name is Mezzy. We don't know much about what's going on, but he's just being tortured, and he's older looking. These are the scenes where we get some of that nudity, both posterior and frontal male nudity. Again, it's just kind of in these quick flashes. It's not sexual in content-wise. We also have a dead body at one point in this book that also has some nudity. But again, it's pretty indistinct. I mean, you know what's going on, but it's not graphic. But again, just worth noting for those that don't want to see that. But yeah, those are the two kind of elements we have in this central storyline. But the main story is all kind of this present day in this dystopia. And across the first couple issues, we basically just have the two of them, Maceo and Mezzy, kind of just befriending each other. And it begins really slow because at first, Mezzy really doesn't like Mace, just believing he's a total liability, and yet she keeps saving him. We don't really know why. And eventually, he just begins to warm her heart. He sets up a TV and they watch cartoons together. She laughs for the first time and has no idea what that's about. She actually introduces him to Christmas, which is kind of fun. And slowly, they begin to strike up this friendship. Along the way, we also have kind of the suggestion that she's part of this really rigid order that's kind of a Boy Scouts gone super, super wasteland evil, kind of. And we find out that they're actually being hunted by this troop that's looking for her. Along the way, we discover that she knows the location to this oasis. She has a really horrible backstory with this group of characters. And again, along the way, she's kind of falling for this central character, or at least their friends. He seems to be smitten as well. Again, we have a lot of twists and turns here. We have some backstory for both of them. And then ultimately, we have them confronted by this troop, and they have to survive and make their way out. It looks like she abandons him only to come back and reunite. And that's really just the beginning of this journey. The end of this collection goes into that far future after the main character, Mace, was kind of tortured, and we ultimately have him reunite with Mezzy. Again, this is a really fun first volume. I believe this series is already completed. It's completed across 3 paperbacks. I believe a deluxe is coming out next year in 2025. But the first 5 issues in this volume were a lot of fun. I think that this is a really interesting juxtaposition of kind of cartoony animated art style and an absolutely grotesque and vile dystopia. And similarly, the tone or kind of what we explore goes back and forth between this horrible bleak future and a love story. And they even kind of talk about how there's no love in the wasteland, and yet here we are. It's rare that I find series that play with genre, play with tone in this way. It's funny to have something that's so grotesque and yet kind of adorable at the same time. I think Jason Aaron really swung for the fences here, and ultimately the product we get I thought was really solid. It's not like much I've read before. Again, especially for a dystopian wasteland kind of book, there's a lot of warmth here, a lot of heart here, and definitely a lot of intrigue. This for me was a page turner and something that was ultimately a delightful surprise overall. At the back of the collection, we are given some extras. We have some behind-the-scenes kind of imagery, some written stuff, scripting, things like that. And then we do have a cover art gallery for issues 2 through 5, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, that really brings us to the end of the collection. We have a little bit about the authors, and that is Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. And this is, again, a volume 1 of a total 3-volume paperback run. Again, I think they're soliciting a deluxe edition next year with a hardcover in 2025. And now all that's left is to give this trade paperback collection a grade. For a fascinating, fun, and fresh take on a wasteland apocalypse, Jason Aaron's Once Upon a Time at the End of the World certainly didn't disappoint this reader. Boasting a beautiful, kind of more rounded, animated-like art style, and populated with some really brilliant character work, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, Book 1, Love in the Wasteland, a B. I think this is definitely an above-average read, and maybe a title worth checking out from Boom Studios if you're a fan of these genres, these creators, or generally what this book sounds like. I'm definitely intrigued from these first couple issues, and I can't wait to see how the series goes on from here. But I'd be curious to hear from you. Have you read Once Upon a Time at the End of the World? I'd love to get your feedback. Did you enjoy it as I did, or do you have differing opinions? I'd love to hear all of that, and generally what you thought of this video in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you again to those at Boom Studios for providing this review copy. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave that like, comment, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone, have a good one.